Welcome everyone, I'm Greg Stanley. I'm here with Dr. Ron Peterson. We're going to talk today about it's a way we evaluate performance, and some offices will take this and kind of go the wrong way with it. I want to make sure we're going the right way. It's not about holding people accountable for numbers that they have no control over. For example, if you have no control over how many patients come through the practice, for you to have a KPI related to that would be a mistake. This is a way we evaluate how well you process opportunity. For example, so many people come through, that's so many opportunities. We do know that over time that should yield certain outcomes. So doctor, let's talk about KPIs.
Okay, key performance indicators. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Shark Tank. Shark Tank is a television show where people present their businesses and try to talk a crew of billionaires into investing into their business. And a phrase that has come up several times when I've watched it have been these two phrases. One is, your business numbers tell your story. And the second is, you don't know your business if you don't know your numbers. So we're talking about the numbers that you need to know and what they mean. What are the KPIs that we watch in a dental practice? One would be the goals. And there are different types of goals. You can have goals that are for different time frames. You can have annual goals, you can have quarterly goals, you can have daily, weekly goals, you can have immediate goals. And we'll go through some of those. Not all of these will be tracked every single time, but having those goals and being able to make progress and watch and see how you're moving toward them is an important factor in your success. What are the annual goals? Annual goals sometimes can be difficult to actually determine. It's easy to say, gee, I'd like to double my practice in the next 12 months. And that may be actually possible, but it may not be. There's a lot of things that go into setting these goals, and that's knowing a lot about your practice. So any type of goal that you set should be a goal that is actually possible, meaning it's attainable and you have a good opportunity to do it. An interesting thing we found about growth is that if we ask a doctor how much growth they'd like to see over the next year, and then we ask the office manager or one of the leaders what number they think is possible, almost universally, the staff believes that the opportunities and the goals are greater than the doctor does. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. We can look at our monthly goals. Monthly goals need to be based on some things, and that's going to be who produces, how much they produce, how many days you're going to be open, what your typical day produces. But you should have monthly numbers that you can work toward. So setting those will be based again upon some of the shorter term goals that we're going to talk about, such as a daily goal. Once you know how your doctors produce, and you'll be looking even at hourly goals, when you know a doctor produces $700 an hour and that doctor is going to be working 8 hours a day, you can have certainly a goal of $5,600 for that doctor. Now, we realize that means everything has to go right. They have to be scheduled correctly. They have to have the patients show up. And the other things that are important for the proper functioning of your office have to be in place. So having daily goals per producer can help you calculate your monthly. Hourly goals, as I just said, depend upon how productive, how fast, how efficient your office is, and including the doctor. It's not just the doctor, it's the whole office efficiency. If you're wasting 30 minutes between patients, then you're losing half an hour of good production on a doctor that could have produced $300 or $400 in that half an hour. So all of these things, as you track them, you see how they can affect the larger numbers that we started off with. What are the KPIs? Production. Production is how much you produce. Now, there's different types of production. Gross production is the number that you would have produced if every patient paid you your usual, customary, and reasonable fee. And we all pretty much know that that's almost a fantasy. There are so many factors in subtractions, deductions, discounts, write-offs, things from insurance, things from other participating programs that you're in, that your total UCR or gross production number is almost a fantasy. So that's gross. But it gives you an idea of how productive your doctors are. The number that really matters is net or adjusted, which means the amount of money you expect to collect. So you take the gross number, you remove all of the write-offs, adjustments, deductions, discounts, all of those things, and you get the net number. The net number should be identical, ideally, to the collection number, not month by month, but at the end of the year. Ideally, they should be identical. They virtually never are, but you want them within 1 or 2% of each other. And surprisingly, some years you'll actually collect more than you produce. It just can vary a little bit. Your daily numbers will help you determine things like daily bonuses. If you have a bonus set at a daily production number, everybody obviously wants to know how much you produce that day. And that will be something that you'll also want to track because that's an important number for everybody. And goals also have the ability to stimulate people, to make them go after it, and especially if there's a little prize waiting for them at the end of the day when they make it. Collections. Obviously, collections are crucial because that's how much money's coming in. I said earlier, net production and collections should be identical. If they are not running close, then you've got to look at why that's happening. If it could be typically from one of two reasons. If it is because it's the net number for production is being calculated incorrectly, then you've got to be sure that you fix it. If the collections are not keeping pace because the money's just not being collected, then that's a different problem. So if collections and net production over time have a larger gap, then there's a problem with one of those two. Either the net is not being calculated correctly or the money is not being collected. We look at production by producer. Experienced doctors typically produce considerably more than inexperienced doctors because they're faster, more confident, and they know more procedures. But even new dentists right out of school need to have reasonable goals set for production. They may be just a few $100s an hour to begin with because they're doing simple procedures and it takes them more time than you would like to see, but you got to start somewhere. But if you're starting a new doctor at a $300 per hour production goal, you know within a month or two you want that number to go up to 400 or more as time passes so that you can encourage them to get to a number that makes sense for them and makes sense for the practice. So we're looking at each doctor's individual production also. Other things that can work into your production is if you have a membership program, how many sales and renewals are there every month? And this can be a surprisingly large number in bigger practices. There are several practices we work with that have large numbers of patients on membership, and their renewal and new membership sales usually exceed $25,000 to even $30,000 a month. This isn't a typical practice, obviously, but it shows you how big of a factor this can be, and that has to calculate into your production. Hygiene. We want to know how much the hygiene department is producing. If needed, we can break it down by each hygienist to see how they do. But this should be a reasonable number also, not a fantasy number. And it should never include unattainable numbers that are based upon selling perio, for example. These need to be reasonable numbers that are very makeable based on a routine hygienist's day and schedule. The dental total. We like to see the total amount the hygiene department produced and the total amount the dental department produced, because there are ratios between the two that we find give a good idea of whether the whole department on one side or the other is under or overperforming. So this gives us another calculation that we can look at to see how those two departments are producing in relationship to each other. And by individual doctor, as we talked about, younger doctors, older doctors, faster doctors, doctors that do certain procedures versus others, they may all have individual hourly and daily goals, and you'll learn how to calculate those and put them together, because all of these things that we just talked about is how you get to a reasonable annual goal for the next year based upon how much more production you reasonably think you can accomplish in that time frame. New patients. Offices need new patients to keep growing and to thrive. New patients come from two sources. They can come from marketing, or they can come from referrals, word of mouth. And we want to calculate both of those individually, because we find there are numbers that are reasonable to expect for referrals. If you are treating your patients well, they're having a great experience, they'll tell their friends. And you should reasonably expect to receive as many as 20 new referrals per month per doctor if all your systems are functioning well and all your people are doing their job in making sure the patient experience is what you want it to be. Referrals versus total numbers depends on how your marketing is functioning, but even in an office highly involved with marketing, your referrals should match the number of people that you bring in through marketing. So if you're bringing in 50 people through marketing, we'd like to see you bring in 50 people through referrals. That shows a healthy practice where patients are happy. If you're bringing in 70 or 80 new patients a month through marketing and you're getting 5 referrals, your marketing's working, but your patient experience isn't. That's what that kind of a number can tell you. Greg, would you like to talk about the key performance indicator of case average? Because you're the person that developed this.
Well, there's a lot of ways to calculate it. Some people use actual case average, where they take the number of patients a doctor saw divided into the amount of production or collections that came out of that. Something we've done for years is just take the total number of new patients and divide it into the total production, including hygiene. These are just rough indicators of how well opportunity is being processed. So, for example, so it doesn't matter which one of the methods you choose, just stay with that one, okay? And so on case average, when we look at the actual case average, doctor, patient seen, divided into doctor's production. A number we see a lot is associates at 300 to 700, owners at 700 to 1100. I mean, so that's case average. It tells us the thing I talked about when we very first started this recording. The thing KPIs interest us as consultants in the most is how is your opportunity being received and processed. So let's say you bring on a marketing person, like Gary Bird or one of these people, and that brings in 50 new patients a month. Well, we know from experience that should produce a certain amount of production, collection, hygiene, etc. So based on that flow, we'll be looking to see if KPIs are within range. So this is a good one. Case average. Normally, like I said, we at one time took all production divided by all new patients. When you do it that way, it tends to not fall any one doctor. If there's multiple doctors, it's great if there's just an owner. But in that sense, we used to say 2,000 to 2,500 was a good number. Now, let me tell you why this is important. With any of these, either method, okay? If that number gets high, you have to really multitask and put one of your eyes on this and one of them is on referrals. Because as case average rises, if it goes beyond a certain point, we tend to see referrals start to dive. And so up to a point, if we're low, we're wasting opportunity. If we get too high, our future is damaged by lost future referrals. So enough on that, Doctor.
Now, and the point on this is one of those KPIs where there's a lot of nuance. And how you set it up, how you follow it, will determine what it means. And we'll help you with that. It's easy to calculate, but it can be quite meaningful. Hygiene days out, this just simply means if someone calls in today needing a hygiene appointment, how soon can they get one, not including cancellations. So this tells you how far you're booking out. If it's too far out, more than a week, let's say 5 days, then it's too long. So this will give you an indication of whether you need more staff in that area. The second part of this will be actually a live demonstration of using these KPIs in a spreadsheet that Whitehall has developed. We'll do that for you, and then we'll be more than happy to answer questions for you at some point. Just send us an email and we'll help you.
That's a great idea. And like I said, I'd like everybody to remember the idea here is we want to see performance indicators on people who get opportunity.
We'll continue with a
If you're a
demonstration
hygienist,
of
if you're
keeping
a
key performance
financial arranger,
indicators
whatever.
tracked on a
If you have no
spreadsheet.
control over
This is
those
a
things,
spreadsheet that
that's
I like
not
to
your
use
KPI.
at Whitehall. We have a lot of variations of it, but this will give you a good idea of how it works. In this case, we're going to log in the numbers from February of 2021. And we worked in this case for 19 days. That's the number of days the office was open. The goal for the month was $300,000. The actual gross clinic production was $297,500. The net production, which is the production number after all subtractions, deductions, write-offs, was 266,084. Clinic collections, the amount of money that came in, 266,051. The hygiene department production was 36,377. And this is a membership office. Their membership sales for the month, 27,726. That gives you now all of the pertinent production numbers that you need to track for the month. You'll also notice now on the first pink line, which says restorative production, it gives you a total of $233,397. That is the amount of total restorative production from that department. Right next to that, where it says Dr. 1, is that total number transferred over. Now, Dr. 1 was not the only one with production. So now we're going to add the production of the other 3 doctors in the office and watch what happens to the number on Dr. 1's production. So Dr. 2 produced 5,101. And you'll see now that Dr. 1's production was reduced by that amount. Dr. 3 produced 58,267. And Dr. 4, who's just getting started, produced 12,290. Okay, now you can see that the total restoration production is the amount from doctors 1, 2, 3, and 4 added together. The Dr. 5 column is in case and when they add another associate. We'll skip over the case average number and go to total new patients. And in this case, they had 131 total new patients, and they had 48 of those that came into the office by referral. Now, a number just came up under case average, and that is the production divided by the number of patients. And this number is not an absolute. This is essentially a measurement of the value of new patients in your office. And we like to see this number in the $2,500 range. $2,000 is very acceptable in many cases, but what we're really looking for is trends with this, because this tells us how much money we're producing in relationship to the new patients that are coming in. And if that number is very high, it can mean that we have too few new patients really coming in, or if it's very low, it means we've got lots of new patients, but they're not getting diagnosed with the treatment that they need. So the diagnosis and treatment planning needs to be looked at to be sure it's accurate. The last number is hygiene days out. We'll call that 45 again. And that just means how many days a patient would need to wait for a routine hygiene appointment, not including cancellations. So let's look at what this has told us so far, because we have columns at the bottom or rows at the bottom that are totals and averages. The total for the production goals has been 650, which works out to 325 per month, and then it's the same all the way across with totals and averages. Now, sometimes these numbers don't quite work, and there are ways that you can check to be sure they're accurate, and we can show you how to do that. Or if you're familiar with Excel, you'll be able to know how to change that number for the total. These numbers, though, as you go month by month, will tell you a lot about the health of the practice, how you're trending, how your doctors are doing, and how your total numbers are working out. So if there are questions, let us know at Whitehall. Otherwise, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you next time.